Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to today's episode. The title is How Should Leaders Lead Themselves? And I feel this topic is necessary, especially in a world where human beings, as they evolve experientially, the container to respond to the moment changes. That means as a person succeeds, it's this, you can say it's a common rule, whether you're a general on a battlefield or some peon in some sort of workspace, whatever it is. It is the case that to change the world, we must find the potential of change within ourselves. The poet Rumi tells us that when I was younger, I wanted to change the world. Now that I'm older, I change myself. If there isn't the ability to change the inner realms, in some sense, and adjust to the outer realms, then there is no proper change that can come in the outer realms. The leadership that Civilization 2.0 and the world requires is invisible leadership. When Lao Tzu says, once the leader's task is done, the people would say we did it ourselves. That is the task, that if from the beginning it's a collective emergence rather than individual emergence, the domino effect to collective emergence. There's some moments in life where the person, just like how, let's say you're talking to someone and someone interrupts you and you look at that person and you're like, hey, hold on for a second, let me finish here. It's like some moments the person has to have an ability to ask their own self to hold on, poetically speaking. I can say that every human being I've seen has been a leader, but they have been a leader of their own mind. To become a leader of the mind of others is, first of all, I feel it's chosen by nature. There is no preparation. There is to some degree just a choice of when the tree is ready to give fruit, it gives fruit. When the ability is there, the performance can happen. But that's the first view, that it's nature decided. That means whatever the person does, nature knows what it wants. That means call it luck, call it the absence of luck, call it whatever. Nature is moving. And nature, we may feel it's moving slower than man, but I will tell you, nature is moving so much faster than us. It's as if in every moment we're living multiple moments. So how should the effort be made? So first we got to look at it at the beginning. First, what is there to lead? An honest question for people who want to be leaders, of industries, leaders of nations, people who want to go and change the world, or even you can say from the context of those who are trying to even bring God's will. Whatever narrative of justification there is. There is a leader that assumes they know what's in the room that they can't see, and implements the strategy, the same strategy prior to entering the new room and while entering the new room. And then there's some leaders where I would say these are the teacher of teachers. I would say Rishi Vyasa was one of the unique ones. Where if the being is selfless, the self of others comes into your attention. Then you can lead. It's like this thing where, just as Lao Tzu was saying, the quote, I quoted him earlier, he said, after the leader's task is done, the people would say we did it ourselves. you can say it's the same thing, where after the soul's task is done, the mind's like, I did it myself. I would say leadership is done in a strange way. I would say that human beings have reached an awareness similar to how the Buddha, there's a story where the Buddha was asked, hey Buddha, is there going to be another Buddha? And Buddha's like, nah. And the disciples were like, why Buddha? Why isn't there going to be another Buddha? And Buddha's like, because Buddhism would have spread so far, there wouldn't be a need for a Buddha anymore. Something in these lines. So I feel that leadership in its most proper, efficient way is in some sense a self-awareness to the other. That once this rekindles in the human being, it's as if there is a completion. I can tell you that I have experienced moments of existence where I have been the incarnation of passivity. Where I have literally been like, it's like the wall in the room, where it was as if there was no self. It was as if the event inside the moment was more exciting than the event inside my moment, if I can say that. And there's been moments where it's as if our minds, our brains are used to build ourselves, our hearts are used to build the world. That means if you want to build in one dimension, use the brain. If you want to have your creative life force be multidimensional, then you can't just use the brain, The roar of the heart must be heard, We have made in modern times the imagery of love to be soft, to be gentle, But how many people in history, it was because of love where their intensity arose. That means imagine you were a person where back in the day you were in your kingdom, you were in a kingdom and you were just like a villager. And suddenly at midnight, there was like, let's say you were a baker, right, in a kingdom. And at midnight there was suddenly an attack, and the person had to, in some sense, just pick up a sword they had never picked up before, run into the walls of the kingdom and hold the line, And because we have forgotten the ability, I feel the moment we wanted equality for everybody, we forgot the ability that human beings have to work on different levels. That means when we look at even the Titanic, or any structure, whether it's an airplane, whether it's a boat, a car, there is one driver, and then there is the stewards, right? So if everybody wants to be the captain of the ship, there's nobody moving the sails, there's nobody doing anything else, right? So the system is multidimensional, and leadership must begin seeing as multidimensional. Now there are leaders who they want the image in the future, as if in their inner realms they've been given a promise. You're gonna be this, be a good boy and do this, as if the lords of karma are still waiting. When will this person realize our voices whispers? Leadership begins with the self's task in the world. And so leaders are made by their worldviews. And the passion to response is the continuity of it. There has been moments in my life where I've been terrified of doing things, And some moments I haven't. I folded like a coward. And there's been moments where I went all in, right? And those moments that I could go all into the moment, I could tell you was it was when the effect was more than the causal position. That means really human beings don't have a really their motivation for movement is, for now in this culture, just improvement. People spend money on wanting to improve themselves, you know. People spend money on wanting to improve how they look, how their house looks, how everything looks, you know. Improvement has become, people are worshiping improvement. You know, improvement has become a sort of god on earth. But to improve the world may mean that you need to see yourself in the, not in the driver's seat, in the passenger seat. And this is an idea where I will tell you, I'm in the minority here, because most people on this planet advise that we must focus on the individual, because it might not make sense. Let's say you go work, you have a collective service in your heart, you know, you want to go serve something more than yourself, okay? And so what tends to happen is that we have made a civilization that to be humble and simple in makes us a fool. Pretty much we have built a civilization for just one kind of speed of a human being. You know, I'll tell you this. Imagine in a world where everybody's rebelling all the time. 24/7. Everybody's rebelling. Rioting. You know? Then the rebellion in a world filled with rebellion would be to stop the rebellion. That means the first human being who stops rebelling is like, oh my God, another meta rebellion has begun. You know? And being a human being, of course, you know, in some circumstances it appears easy. In some circumstances it is the most mysterious, strangest, what am I doing here kind of thing, you know? You know? And I'll tell you, there are fears of crossing actual physical mountains, and then there are ideological fears. Let me tell you, the fear of the inner realms is so much heavier because it could imply a transitioning of the world your egoic construct has conditioned into. Imagine you're a person who everything you did, whether you failed or not, everybody was like, good job, good job, good job, to a point where your mind couldn't know if failure was a good job or if success was a good job. Do you know? I will tell you, this is how I feel true leaders on this planet are born. They suddenly realize that their eyes are in the world for the first time and none of the species know. Nobody on the species knows. And when I say nobody in the species knows, I mean nobody in the species knows enough. There's a greater than sign to the unknown than the known. So anything that activates the greater potential of the unknown will be chosen by nature to, in some sense, become a leader. You see, nature has an outer realm program to it. Do you know? That means I've seen too much to know that there is something. It's as if, like, think of it this way. Imagine there were extraterrestrials, there were interdimensional, you know, invisible, the sense, esoteric, invisible, other, or whatnot. There were interdimensional forces, okay? Now we're looking at this cosmos and we don't see anything. But now imagine we were an advanced alien civilization to our own civilization. That means here's this next level story. I don't know how many people have heard it. I think maybe no one, but ideas echo anyways. Imagine our civilization succeeded. Imagine somehow there were leaders and these leaders came up and they're like, all right, human beings, we either die alone or we live together. Pretty much two options. Now, let's say the species chooses to live together. Now, how do we live together? In order to live together properly, there has to be a clarity and concern and care. That means it doesn't matter. It's like I've seen this in too many scenes in movies where the person who is evil in one dimension is soft and good in another dimension. Like you see in the movie, the hard, you know, the cruel mafioso suddenly cares for his family. What a lovely guy, you know, destroying the, you know. So it becomes this, the situation where it's like nobody is sculpted in one manner of sight. That means it is as much arrogance to believe someone is something as much arrogance as they believe they are something. In a changing world, to really have an ego, that requires, excuse my language, but that requires balls. That's a very daring thing in a changing world, to believe something, you know. The mind has a dynamic initiative. That means my mind exists when there's movement. My individualism. That means if the being is not moving, there is nothing to lead. That means if the person on an individual level is stationary, there is no leadership. Nothing is being led. Nothing is being even led from the inner realms, right? So a human being is a type of creature that it's as if our ability to observe, or as Krishnamurti says, true observation. This ability to observe what is truly there is an inner instruction. We are literally like a robot, you know, that in some, or I wouldn't say robot, but it's like we're like two beings in two dimensions that the back of their heads are connected. That means this biological existence, I felt this was the only thing that's here, but this biological existence is constantly being overlaid, or I should say, overlay simulations. You know, subjective simulations are endlessly, ideas of myself are endlessly possessing the biological body that, because it is atomic, has no owner, right? Because we move the body, we feel it is our body. Now, let's say you were like back in the day in back in the day in a parallel universe. Whenever it comes to talking about fantasy, you gotta speak like this, you know. So imagine in a total fantasy realm, you're someone who's like a disciple of Gandalf or something, you know? And so you have an ability to move the elements. Like you can kind of, I don't know, look at, I don't know, matter and levitate it or whatever, right? Or you can use the elements of fire and whatnot. So let's say you're a person who, okay, I'll create a hypothetical situation, a nice setting, example. You are a mage, okay? And as a mage, you have an intimacy with the elemental realm. And this intimacy with the elemental realm means that you can use the elements of the, like your body's made of the periodic table. Now imagine like you realize your mind was a field and elemental activity in it could move whether the body was moving or not. So this would mean that imagine there's a person being chased, or oh my god, I could just tell you this scene from Lord of the Rings. Okay, there's a scene in Lord of the Rings where like that elf lady's saving like a, you know, I don't know, sick Frodo, you know. And the elfish lady is saving this Frodo and crossing the lake and the water and whatever, right? And all these weird like what were they, the fallen kings or whatever, like they're all chasing this elf lady. Then she like whispers something to the water and a group of horses elementally with water come. In that moment, I could tell you, if a human being speaks and the water moves to their will, that's a body. That means we don't realize it. This is the whole difference between the alpha and the beta psychology, which has been haunting our species. Let me tell you what I mean by this, okay? It's all about life being a program and what is directing the program. That means if two people, person A and person B, are in a park, and person A tells person B, you know, go sit over there, or go grab that, or whatever, right? Person A hasn't, let's say, realized that their jurisdiction of moving objective phenomena is in there. It's like up to the edge of your skin, okay? But when a person says, you do this for me, do that for me, that is in some sense another mind non-locally controlling your body. Now, this is why I'm saying it has been haunting the species, because we have hierarchical systems and we need a competitive angle to keep things updating, which is why capitalism works. But at the same time, we need to have a morality of the hierarchical structure, right? You know what it is? It's as if like the world is a concentric, made of concentric spheres like an onion. And so imagine, for example, capitalism satisfying one of the spheres of this onion, but there's so many other spheres that it doesn't satisfy, you know. And so leadership comes where it's like a snowball effect of leadership. You got to have something to be able to do something with it, you know. Whether it's from your inner realms, you need to have something to experience, or in your outer realms, you need to have something to experience. For me, I will tell you, my mind bowed to my heart. And the heart is a metaphor for how nature is being before we do anything. The mind is a metaphor of how nature is after we do something, after the mind has done, played its game. I've defined success equating literally an equal sign to efficient vision. The efficiency of vision is based on awareness, and people have two choices. You know, I feel there is no such, even though I've used the terms, for example, people have a conditioning. People are not just spoon-fed by their parents' baby food. They're spoon-fed literally like ideology, behavior, systems of thought, systems of value, conclusions before explorations. Do you know, it's as if there's a lot of information that just gets vacuumed into the psychology of the human being. If you want to lead an object, you have to know the location it's going to move to before. You have to know the potential of mobility of all the members, you know. That means it's awareness to all the different chess pieces of the moment. You know, if a person doesn't have a firm clarity of the chessboard, you can't really play chess. You know, the moves are not done with they're not completed with confidence. You know. Because I was born in 1991, I had to go through many PowerPoint presentations of world leaders when I was in like middle school or whatnot. And so these PowerPoint presentations of of like Gandhi and different people, you know, it made me feel that civilization has been pushed in the shadow of the greatness of those before us. That means it's as if when we feel the past is like a statue towering above us, the future will have no confidence to go so beyond that height. So we can do it, we can say it this way, that how should leaders lead themselves? To give a straight answer to this, there are three dimensions. Based on what you are, there is a requirement to lead it. Okay? If you are to yourself, for example, someone who's had a very high awareness of self, and you feel your presence and energetically you're inseparable from everything, so those people who feel they're in non-dualism or oneness, these are I would say this kind of Advaitin path is really that the leader is the whole moment. So there are some people who I would say, let's start it this way. There's some people who they need to lead the body. That means it's as if they're multidimensional beings that have arrived in this plane of existence to pilot through the physical evolution of the species. I would honestly say I wouldn't be surprised if we suddenly at the end of this physical plane of existence, at the end of this life, we suddenly opened our eyes and we noticed that there is multiple levels. There's different levels of blueprints. That's one thing that's for certain. What did we do when we broke the atom? We went and found a completely different setting of particles, right? So what this implies is that man's exploration sets him into a new state where he cannot be the same as the past. So those who are leaders of the body, they in some sense don't need too much ideology. They just need effort, energy, and decency. Those who are to lead the minds of people need discretion. That means if you don't have a discretion, or deep down in your heart you have bias, you should put down the sword and shield of leadership and leave the room. That's true leadership right there. When the leader knows they can't lead. Okay, that's the beginning of how leader comes, where the ability is not through desire. The person's ability is not just because I desire it and it's gonna happen. To live a life like that means that you're not even living on earth, right? To just live a life based on your inner realms, or to live a life on the outer realms, it's as if it's one-sided. The other side of the coin gets missed. Or it's another way of saying, like, imagine someone who talks, like, I have to balance, because I give these talks often. I have to have moments where I just go and listen to things, right? Where I have no need to speak, where the world is speaking before my voice needs to be there. Because after a while, everything is for expansion of vision, so novelty can arise. That's it. Nobody can lead to a point where they know what's going on. If we wanted to have a complete rationalistic leadership, right, we would have robots lead us. That means literally in the future there wouldn't be presidents, there would just be advanced AI machines, and then human beings would have a choice on what policy this AI machine's going to just implement, right? Right now, people are voting for human beings who their behaviors suggest what's going to happen to the psychology of the governmental institution, right? But if people can choose a vote on the policies rather than the people, then the greatest policies will just come to light, And of course, this is way in the future when AI, this is like after the year 2050 probably. There's going to come a point where literally robots are going to take our jobs, And after that, in a very sci-fi future, actual aliens will take our jobs, let's say 4,000 years from now, It's like, this alien has 5 brains. I can't compete in the workspace, Oh man. Leaders of the mind have to protect novelty. That means, think of it this way: leaders of the mind, they require to be guardians of the future. Leaders of the body require to be guardians of the past. You know, that means how you treat the present moment suggests how you're going to find how you're going to be a memory to your future self. That means if I'm giving this talk and I suddenly, make myself sad, that's the memory I'm going to have tomorrow. So we don't realize it, but every moment it's like our memories are coming out of the oven for the future self. Excuse me, this headphone cord was cut off. Leaders of that which is beyond the mind have known that the unknown is here before the known, therefore trust in the unknown. Whatever way you can get to that, you can fly beyond that atmospheres of language. Pretty much this is how I find this universal. As a pilot in this plane of existence, it's as if there is one option of navigating as a known object inside an unknown subject, which comes across as the mind, but then it becomes going in accordance. It's as if first we are doing unknown things, then you can say through advancement we are being the unknown. That's the most advanced, the most unknown advanced thing we can do to become the unknown. Right? This means for the first time, it's like tag, where the conscious mind tags the whole unconscious, whole collective unconscious, and then the whole collective unconscious becomes conscious, and your personal life becomes unknown. So what that means is, think as if my biological existence, as an example, is like the stem of a leaf connected to a branch. Now imagine the mind to be the branch. The branch has multiple leaves connected to it. This is how memory occurs. Memory is like the same leaves on that branch. So if you jump to another memory, it opens up another vast spectrum. It's like in an ocean of geometry, we're swimming and geometry is getting everywhere. If the leader is an idea to themselves, or the idea of the self is more important, then they are not a leader. To be a leader in your inner realm is pretty much attention telling design where to go. There was I'll tell you a very fascinating mystical story from Sikhism. There is a very notable figure in the Sikh tradition named as Guru Arjan. And there's a story that there are these three, educated kind of, intellectuals, and they want to go meet this man, Guru Arjan, who was a compiler, who was like some divine guru figure, and also, the man was known, right? The man was had a value to the globe. And so what happens is Guru Arjan these three people go to meet Guru Arjan, and they're going to the town where Guru Arjan is, and on the way they see this house, this very small house, and they're travelers, they're tired, there's nowhere to stay. They see this random house between the town and so on their way to the town they find this house, right? Miraculous house out of nowhere, and they go inside the house, and there's an old man there, you know you know and this old man, what does he do? He welcomes them. He's like, you guys can stay here for free and rest the night. This is back in the day, guys. And he's like, rest here. And the guy is just this old man who's like, helping. It's like when you get old, you realize there isn't much you can hold, so you try to give as much as possible. Old people should just be in a giving mindset, But anyways, it's like, this is the thing. The young take, the old give. So anyways, these guys wake up, and in the morning they're about to leave, and they see the old man's not there, and they're like, okay, this was very strange, this was a blessing. And right before they leave, they see that the old man even straightened their shoes at the door. And they get shocked, such humility from a stranger. Then they get to the town, and when they get to the town, it's as if they hear like something's happening, and they just see everybody, from people to children, running to the town because some important event is coming. Guru Arjan has come, right? And these three travelers are like, okay, Guru Arjan is here, right? Let's go see him, And they see this giant crowd and this kind of like, very, I don't know, some nice seating or whatever, and they see who's sitting there. The same guy who straightened their shoes and was acting like a worker, like their servant, in the town was Guru Arjan. That's the level of the being he was, where like in the day he was like, I don't know, enlightened guru. At night he was like, servant of the realm. So there was something there, but that there was enough humility. There was a level of that's truly, I would say, true royalty has to have the contrast of the absence of true royalty. That means, here's the thing, if you're a person going through a chaotic moment, be grateful. Now you know what the opposite is, And if you're a person going in an ordered moment, be grateful. Now you know what the chaos could be. That's the thing about life. We have taken it so seriously ideologically that we're missing out on its natural possibilities, An advanced civilization can only arise when the citizens of that civilization advance. No other way. Let's say we had this like very cool extraterrestrial from the from the Andromeda galaxy come down to Earth, and the extraterrestrial was like, guys, do you want world peace? I can give you world peace, at a whim of my finger, And so the people were like, yo, do we want, sorry, not world peace, do you want an advanced civilization? Imagine the extraterrestrial would say, right? And we would be like, yo, do we want an advanced civilization? Imagine in 1 second, in a nanosecond, the extraterrestrial would give us the most advanced civilization. Then the question would become, are we ready? That means, are we giving too much in the hands of a creature that just wants to play and giggle in inefficiency, or does the advancement deserve its own life force? I have had moments even in this life where I've gone and I've had a thought, let's say, and that thought wasn't pleasant. Whether the thought was rude, or the thought was of a descended nature, or the thought was, some sort of, uh, spike, like spike of a unpleasant thought or impure thought or whatnot, right? I have had moments where literally I've been too, like, how can I tell you? Have you ever been too busy for your own thoughts? I have had moments where I've noticed, just like it's like we don't realize our words are evoking existence in our inner realms. That means everything I'm saying, whether the audience knows it or not, the subconscious mind is seeing the film and in a subtle way responding to it. You know, I have thrown the thought away. Literally, as if imagine like there was like a, I don't know, a rock hovering like in front of your face, like a golf ball sized rock, and you're like, why is this rock hovering here? You instantly grab it and throw it away. I have thrown, I would say, unnecessary thoughts often. When I say unnecessary thoughts, I mean I have dismissed, just like imagine you're a general and a thought comes to you, right? And so it's up to you to say to the thought at ease or not. Do you know? Where it's as if you embrace what is the living moment or you don't embrace it. That is all of leadership. It comes down to the life sensitivity that, hey, in the middle of the theatrics, are you being a human being still? You know? And I can tell you, I feel there was a blessing for that my eyes found, that I realize if we're multidimensional, the fear of death should, in some sense, inspire, but it shouldn't create inefficient haste. Right now, I would say the children of this planet and most human beings, they're trying to be like an eternal candle. We have this view, Sadhguru, he was this very profound mystic. He says, we think other people die, but life is fragile. And in this fragility, it means every moment you don't do something is a moment, is a gift left unopened. Imagine you got a gift every day, and if you didn't open it, the gift would be thrown out. And to truly experience a multidimensionality, to truly usher in the era of the advanced communicators and the multidimensional and civilization 2.0, and the visions of the castles in the sky, it's like before we can get there, we require to be free on Earth. That means to build a sky city and to leave Earth means you have had to complete your work here on the surface. The question comes that the sensory perception, Aristotle caught on to this, but I'll say it this way. The sensory perception, it gives us access to depth, like dimensions in space. And that means imagine textbooks never existed and people had to figure everything out from the beginning. Literally, we had to reinvent the wheel of our karma. No inventor, I would say, like an invention is such a divine experience. I don't know how to tell you this, but there's a reason I feel that the artistic mind lives with more of an energetic flexibility than the mind that is wants to walk in a museum that's already, the artwork's been set in a certain way. You know, I've had moments in my life where I knew how to lead the personal dimension of my life, and there's moments where I had no clue. I was literally like a fool in my own universe. I was the biggest fool I knew. Honestly, up to this day, I don't think I know a greater fool. You know, can you imagine in the futures, people are like, no, I'm more foolish than you. No, I'm more foolish than you. You know, and we don't realize it's language living its own life in our eyes, and it's us living our own life in the world. We are like the thoughts of the planet. We are inventions of the planet. That means think about it. We say evolution happened, right? I have a view on evolution that light programmed evolution. I call it the on and off switch effect in the cosmos, or of our solar system at least. And literally, there's so many stars dying and being born that it's pretty much like a strobe light. Probably this is a strobe light universe, you know. Moments where self can't move the world, self can at least watch the world and watch how the inner realms go. When your outer realms um, have reached their limits, the inner realms is where the journey continues. Or another way of saying this is like when the person gets to the mountain peak, the journey is not over. It's just that the next journey is with wings beyond the capacity of intelligence of the leg limbs climbing. It's as if like we are in the individual training room of the cosmos. And you know what it feels like being a human being now? It feels like everybody is playing a giant Texas Hold'em game. Everybody. And people are choosing to go all in or to fold, you know? And I'm just saying, what if 8 billion beings just went all in, right? Because what is the value of the DNA passing this lifetime? The value of the DNA is only being echoed. On a personal level, it's just like I don't know. It's kind of like the person's inefficiency on of the body can be uh, attributed to the insecurity of the mind. The inefficiency of the mind can be attributed to the insecurity of knowing what is here before you are. And I would say there's no such thing as belief. There's just different levels of inner realm exploration. I don't believe it. I don't believe that people can believe the same thing when every day they wake up and they're a different person, like cellularly, like your consciousness. Even we say it's a new day, you know, and we give we have literally divided and conquered one giant event as time. That means history is the imagination of one moment of being. One cannot lead what they can't see. There was a Zen story where there was this monk, and this monk had no aspirations to be anything more than a monk. But this monk was talking, and he would just give insight, and after a point, the people of the town were like, yo, you know, this monk is like enlightened. You know, it's like he has to be our guru. And people of the village, they go to the monk, you know, and they're like, be our guru. They give glorification to the guru, you know, to the monk. And then the monk is like, okay, synchronicity, this is the nature of things, you know. Then the monk goes there and Somebody asks a question starting with why this? The monk feels a drop of cold sweat, what do you call it? Like, and he instantly in that moment he realizes he doesn't know. And he just looks at the people and he takes off the attire of the attitude of the moment and he says, I am leaving and I am no longer your teacher. And the people are shocked. You know, the karma of the collective doesn't understand. But the man leaves and after 2 years comes back with a different glow in his eyes. And now when he speaks, you know, the unknown is not a source of fear for the subjects to be desired about. We must ask, what is the purpose of leadership? You know, before wanting to be leaders. And then if the conclusion is that the outcome is to remain individual, then people can go and learn to be leaders, try to be leaders. I will tell you, it's all about what you have seen. That means if you have seen a whole, let's say you're someone who's a weak person or a strong person, whatever kind of person, you're on a ship and you're the first person who has seen the hole on the ship. Now, leadership is born from the awareness. In some sense, kind of like how Shakespeare would say, some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. Leadership is born from greatness thrust. That means, what does that mean? That means the person suddenly noticed the error, you know? They noticed the inefficiency. Because this is the idea. Leadership doesn't mean it has to be forever. Do you know, this is what I don't understand. You know, that there are some people in this world trying to be one kind of leader. I don't understand that. You know, it's like there's so many dimensions to the human being that we're just, we have taken our psychologies too Shakespearean-like seriously. That means that I would say that the true leadership, I'll tell you, this story is going to be I'm going to tell you another story. In Europe, we have stories of, you know, kings that were overthrown, you know. And of course, that story is everywhere in the world, but I'm saying that, like, when a person reads history, you don't learn from the success of the victorious, you know. let me rephrase that. There's the story of an enlightened king, in contrast to what I was saying earlier. Then this king, one night, gets a dream he's a beggar. So imagine right now, like, you're a president of a nation and you suddenly got the experience of a homeless child on the streets of like the nation you're running. Do you know what that means? It's as if, like, think about that. And imagine this king wakes up after envisioning back in the day in Vedic times, like how he in some sense was a beggar, right? And he freaks out and he finds like this holy man in the council, his guru or whatnot. And he's like, I had a dream, I'm a beggar. Does this mean I have made decisions and done things that my karma, even though I'm a king now, my next lifetime I'm going to be a beggar? Because back in, like I would say, some context there was reincarnation. So you couldn't be a king and you couldn't be ignorant because there was karma. That means if you were a king that led the kingdom like a dog, you would become the king of dogs, you know, in your next lifetime. You know, like for example, this was the idea of karma echoing beyond the limits of the life form. This king goes to the guru and says, Guru, what do I do? What does this mean? And the guru just watches him and says that you are neither a beggar, you are neither a king. Tell me, who are you? And this is a random dude from the forest shouting at a king. But he's shouting from his heart. And the king suddenly awakens. The king says, I am neither a beggar, neither a king. I am. That's the only leadership. Not the dance of beggars and kings till ad infinitum. We cannot stay silent in the face of the trembling hands of the species in inefficiency. If life has a meaning, its meaning is generated in our response to it. And so leadership can be as if, imagine you are just a whole moment of being. This is really mystical insight. This is Patanjali Yoga Sutra level of leadership. Where the being is no longer an object. That means you're no longer a body to be instructed. You're no longer a mind that you need to endlessly give instructions. You become your whole moment. And anything that happens in your whole moment, you try to have an energy level that is beyond it. And let me tell you why. Because in this world, it's like there was this idea of like a person has to be careful. Like this is why it's important. Like they teach this to lifeguards, that when a person is drowning, they freak out, so they may not listen to instructions. Do you know? So the person drowning may actually pull down the person there to help, and they may both drown. So that's a danger of being a lifeguard. right? Now imagine that ideological systems are drowning in the attention given to it. That means we could have treated language as a labyrinth and we're just walking in different parts of it, but we have made language us. And that's where we can not only be easily manipulated, but that our history can be told with, and it will totally have an influence on our psychology. That means our species should be so advanced that if in the future extraterrestrials came to us and they're like, they tried to cut a deal with us, we would be like, I'm not saying we should get insulted like a samurai, but I mean, honestly, the only question you can ask an alien, really, if an extraterrestrial came down on Earth, is like, what is the purpose of your existence? And if the extraterrestrial has an individual task, it makes no sense. That means it's either like, I believe it was Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's like, I don't want to meet stupid aliens. He's such an incredible speaker. The biggest secret in this life is that our eyes don't have one owner, but the whole world. Either the whole world owns our sight, or there is no owner to sight. And so really think about it. Like, what is the reverse of the algorithm of behavior? That means all of human behavior at the end of the day, if it was mapped, it would be it would be a pattern. It would have a shape. So in some sense, it's like human beings are behaving in a certain way, and their behavior is leading to a certain shape of their civilization. Right? So if we can reverse the behavioral algorithm, it would be easy. But now when it comes to actually finding the proper behavioral algorithm for 8 billion human beings, it becomes this way where if you search for it, there will be different views. So that means it's as if like we have to do the opposite. Everybody is feeling their individual first, then collective. What if we started as human beings living as if we were a collective? Do you know? That means it's like, let's say parents in the future, the 200 years from now, when their child's like, I want to be the best at this, the parent would be like, hey, what did you say? And the child's like, I want to be the best, like, I don't know, the best ever, like, tennis player. Or whatever. The parent would notice that that child's mind is seeing individual first then collective. This is, I'm saying in the future, the parent's like, wait a minute, that you should add more to that sentence. For example, I want to be the best for, and that for what is like the question, That means really all of philosophy is like, what is existence doing here? We have a sociologist by the name of Maslow. He speaks of Maslow. He has created this hierarchy of values where the human being first goes in satisfying physiological needs, then psychological needs, then eventually getting to a point where there is self-actualization. And we have to really think about, what does self-actualization mean? That means you have to get all the dimensions to maintain your sense of being as a self until you trust it, and then you can work with it. You know, when it's like people are treating themselves as animals. And as an animal, there is no superior need for a mind. When you look at animals in animal life, I mean, we're the weirdos. We're the weirdo species, you know? We are the alien species to all the other species. Like, we're like an alien to them, you know? Like, can you imagine a person holding a hamster in their hand, and if that hamster had a psychology, it's like, what is this alien holding me right now? Do you know what I mean? Like, if a person has something and they don't use it, that is the only definition of stupidity. If they don't have something and they can't use it, that's innocence. That's not. It's as if children are not stupid. They are innocent. They don't know any better. Do you know? But when somebody knows better and they still uh, continue, then there's a different dimension that's inspiring it. That means really what energizes the human mind is the evolution of attention. And if attention is space, what can space do? Just be. That means it's like, this is the biggest mystery in philosophy. Is being, the word being, a verb? Any philosopher who somehow wonders about this is like a friend of my mind. I feel everyone can practice become their awareness to their inner realms. All you need is either incredible amounts of stillness and silence. You just need to just have simple, okay, I wouldn't say incredible amounts, 10 minutes of silence and stillness where you're literally placing your body. You can do it in a meditative position or not, whatever you like, but you're placing your body either on a comfortable chair, couch, somewhere, right, or even on sitting in nature. And your body is like an object, like, just, there's a cup in front of me right now. I'm putting this cup on the table, just like how I put the cup on the table and I let it go. When it comes to true meditation, I would say your body has to become like the earth. So you have to require, like, the whole point of stillness and silence is that when the body doesn't move, it feels it is the environment. But when it moves in the environment, it feels separate to it. On one level, we say, what does the human being deserve? Then we should ask ourselves, what does the species deserves? And the species deserves a global access to its most efficient ideas. That means we should just be creating networks. I've considered this to be the uh, the future steps of School of Athens 2.0, where all around the planet There is no longer ideological grouping going on. Like we are literally like, you can say a nation is filled with different tribes of ideological value systems, you know. And so imagine everywhere on the planet suddenly, schools of advanced communication opening. People realizing that we don't have to be a statue when it comes to knowledge. That the mind is like a wind or like a bird flying over the sky. That means your whole lifetime you could be a bird sitting on the branch, and a bird flying in the air is going to be like, hey, why haven't you flown yet from the branch of knowledge you're on, right? And the bird's like, what do you mean? I don't have wings. And the bird's like, you kidding me? You're a bird. You have wings. We all have wings. We all have a mind that adds greater dimensions to whatever is just phenomenologically objective. Once the bird flies from the branch, before flying off the branch, it feels it may never come back. And on some case, technically that's how the past works. We can't time travel back to it in the outer realms. But in the inner realms, in an instant we time travel. In inner realms we've already have teleportation, in the outer realms we don't. Because in the inner realms, you can't forget you're in the witness. In the outer realms, by forgetting you're the witness, you can be something. There were yogis literally in Tibetan Buddhism, I would say, that they, in some sense, literally would meditate so long they would self-immolate and they would technically dissolve into a higher dimension. Imagine a 2D, imagine a square, okay? Okay, this is incredible analogy. I'm going to use, so imagine the idea of flatlands, and that there is a table is like a two-dimensional world, okay? And on this two-dimensional world, there's squares. There's Square Town. Okay, so imagine in Square Town, it's this two-dimensional plane, and there's just squares living in this town. Now, one of the squares, all the squares are conditioned to be in a town that everything has to be kept moving and individual, and the show must go on, the show of identity. But now imagine one square in this town suddenly being like, oh man, I'm tired of just being a square. What is this? Are we just squares? Is the whole world a square? And then this square stops moving. Now imagine this square realizes it was always a cube. Imagine you placed a three-dimensional cube on on Square Town. Right? So it's as if one of the squares in Square Town suddenly realized it's a cube. Okay? And that's what I'm saying. That's all meditation is. In some sense, you are a two-dimensional phenomena to yourself. If you remain still and silent, the square realizes it has always been a cube. And so when a square says, hey, are we cubes? Like, we won't freak out anymore. We'll build an advanced civilization that doesn't get paranoid to drastically change, right? There was a quote that really alarmed me when I saw it. It suggests the ego of people, right? How much the ego can blind, right? And Genghis Khan had this idea where his psychology was so savage that when he was conquering, he would say, I am the wrath of God. He would declare that, right? And so it's one of those things where you can't just take without at the end being taken intensely. You know? That means it's as if it's like you're building your own imagined cause and effect. That means forget the word karma. If you just know what cause and effect is, that's enough to be a decent human being. I want to go into a quote tunnel, and the quote tunnel is a segment of these talks where I pretty much read quotes from people back in the day, either on a certain theme or from a certain person. So today is leadership, right? The leader. I just want to see how other human beings, their inner realms, have opened to this idea. John C. Maxwell. A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. Is that right? Arnold H. Glasso. A good leader takes a little more than his share of the blame, a little less than his share of the credit. Chinese proverb. An army of 1,000 is easy to find, but how difficult to find a general. Afghan proverb. Even the largest army is nothing without a good general. Benjamin Franklin. He that cannot obey cannot command. That means if you cannot maintain the most simplest dimension of participating in a collective activity, there's no way you can. It's as if you don't see what is there, there's nothing to lead, you know. George Eliot says, he who rules must fully humor as much as he commands. Benjamin Franklin says, the goodwill of the governed will be starved if not fed by the good deeds of the governors. John Wycliffe says, the higher the monkey climbs, the more he shows his tail. A Yemeni quote, the master of the people is their servant. Yeah, because I mean, this is the view. This is the distinction, guys, also between the Buddha and the Bodhisattva archetype. The Buddha went from the individual hell to the individual heaven. The Bodhisattva realized that the moment you get to the individual heaven, that's when you actually notice the collective hell. And only when we find the collective heaven, that is the end. That is the true ending. That would be as if our multidimensional masterpiece is complete. John Quincy Adams, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. Here's my view, guys. The being cannot know they are a leader till the end of the lifetime. Do you know? So you must live with such a supreme expectation of your own might, where it's as if the roller coaster ride isn't finished. Serve the realm before your eyes vanish. That is the greatest game to play. It's too easy to just see and not do, I'll be honest. Ronald Reagan, the greatest leader is not necessarily the one who does the greatest things. He's the one that gets the people to do the greatest things. Dwight D. Eisenhower, leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something you want done because he wants to do it. Leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something you want done because he wants to do it. No, that's selling. That's not leadership. Leadership is seeing what the best option is regardless of personal justification. You know? That means it's as if the leader has to dismiss himself if he wants to see everything in the moment. Do you know? That means it's as if like the inner realms of the leader is just the logos pretty much. That means ultimately it's not getting what you want or what others want, it's what's the most efficient vision. Whoever finds the most efficient vision, it doesn't matter if it's the wisest or the most ignorant human being, you activate the most efficient vision, right? There is something rewarding in that, right? And the most efficient visions don't activate until the human being cares for the living. That means a leadership that is not life sensitive might as well go lead robots. It's easier. They do everything you program them. You know, it's only we're trying to preserve the inner child of the species, which was a sort of potential that it could have been better. Brandon Sanderson. A man can only lead when others accept him as their leader. And he has only as much authority as his subjects give to him. All of the brilliant ideas in the world cannot save your kingdom if no one will listen to them. Oh yeah, that's true. But if we don't communicate them, nobody will ever listen to them. Woodrow Wilson says leadership does not always wear the harness of compromise. Wow, this next quote, guys, is so important. John Buchan. The task of leadership is not to put greatness into humanity, but to elicit it, for the greatness is already there. There's an Iranian proverb here, a gentle hand may lead even an elephant by a hair. Wow. Yeah. good thing I was born in Iran, yeah. An Ethiopian proverb, a great one must have a long heart. Seneca, great chiefs prove their worthiness. Liberian proverb, if the townspeople are happy, look to the chief. Bulgarian proverb, if you can't serve, you can't rule. Yeah, that's the thing. If we built a civilization where people were like, okay, here's the thing. If you could serve the civilization and somehow properly meet the individual, be able to go up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, to actualize the self, or even the Jungian self by crossing the shadow. Or deducing the shadow, like it's language is like the shadow of a higher dimensional mind, honestly. That means imagine a person looking at their shadow and them thinking their shadow is a completely different being than them, right? But then suddenly being like, wait, where does my shadow come from? And really they turn around and they see no shadows. That's how easy it is to be free in this world. You can turn around. Desiderius Erasmus, in the country of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Wow. Lord Byron, when we think we lead, we are most led. Eleanor Roosevelt. To handle yourself, use your head. To handle others, use your heart. I'm reminded of Socrates, who says there's this thing called the sieve of Socrates. And he says before saying something to someone, ask yourself, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? And the order is probably, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Because really the outer realms doesn't need more problems. Like really human beings should just be adding, not taking away from nature. You know, that's why something's gone wrong, and I think it's not people. I think people are just nature. Nature didn't create low quality creatures. You know, we're high quality. You know, even though we evolved through the dirt, what I'm saying, like and really, we have to think about it this way. Through evolutionary biology, there's this idea that creatures started from, we were a creature underwater, and that's where underwater our eyes evolved. So the eyes evolved underwater, actually, in evolutionary biology. Now, here's the unique thing I was thinking that I don't know how many others are in the same room as me, but I had this view that what if it's a temperature thing? We look at background radiation, pretty much the Hubble telescope saw the temperature of the universe, and it's like, all right, it's like, even though there's going to be entropic heat death, but it seems like it cooled down. So what I'm saying is, like, when the universe cooled down after cosmic inflation, there was suddenly the manifestation of the beginning potential of planets and stars and whatnot, right? So that means when the universe cools down, manifestation appears. And it could be that underneath water, the temperature was so cool that consciousness and form and uniqueness arises in cold temperature. Do you know? It could be that evolution is it could be that the potential of consciousness is actually temperature based. Because think about it, the moment, aside from the body, right, it's the potential that arose, right? This is a big deal, that we're creatures that look at your, like whoever's listening to me, look at your hands, look at your body. You're a creature right now. Do you know? This emerged on a rock. Do you see? There was through a very long time. And why the design is the grandest mystery. Because we are left to having no choice in rendering everything with the little from our birth till now that what we know. But the universe is much older. That means it makes sense to respect the world because it is your elder. A difference of opinion. What George Patton here says, don't tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do and let them surprise you with their results. That's why so many soldiers, their potential wasn't fully actualized. I find this is the most important thing. You have to. You don't send a soldier unarmed into the battlefield, and it's not enough to just have instructions in this world. That means it's like, I don't know how many people want to live a sort of a life with an IKEA user manual, but like the most complex, sophisticated generator of all the meaning in your life is right in your eyes. That means leadership that is insensitive to the direct experiential dimension is not leadership. It's fear. The other side of the coin of desire. Albert Schweitzer says example is not the main thing in influencing others, it is the only thing. Dwight Eisenhower, you do not lead by hitting people over the head, that's assault, not leadership. Holy shit. Yeah, guys, it's like back in the day, it was like just two cavemen with clubs hitting each other in the head. That's how I imagine all of history. Just when they're like, what were your ancestors like? I'm like, oh boy, all our ancestors began in the jungles, in the jungles of some unknown facilitation. Yeah. Publilius Sirius says anyone can hold the helm when the sea is calm. That means, and yeah, this is so true. Oh my God, this is like, this is, I would say, a huge social requirement. Society requires this. You see, I've seen people who they are, their nature. No, okay, maybe I'm branding too seriously, but I've seen people who when they get scared, they forget their real eyes because they weren't ever, like, how would I say it? Leadership is a requirement of just to balance the inefficiency back towards efficiency somehow. The moment it's above efficiency, there is no leader. That means, imagine like a gardener has worked in making a beautiful gardener, right? And imagine one person comes and plants a flower in that garden. Do you know? It's like, is that leadership? Oh man. Anyways, guys, care for the world and you'll succeed before you know it. Literally. Ray Kroc says the quality of a leader is reflected in the standards they set for themselves. Thomas Paine, lead, follow, or get out of the way. Wow. Atli Stevenson 2. It's hard, the second. It's hard to lead a cavalry charge if you think you look funny on a horse. Aristotle says, he who cannot be a good follower cannot be a good leader. That means if you compare the leader and follower together, they don't make sense. They're two dimensions. One is like the defense, one is the offense. You both are needed, the sword and the shield. Even though we have moved past the medieval age, I honestly feel all nations on the planet can be classified. They can be classified as if, are they holding the shield up or are they holding the sword up, right? And right now it's a way where it's as if like we understand a group survives better than an individual, but why has the species not realized that the group doesn't? It's like we can have. Imagine a future where all nations have become sub-nations of not a piece of land, but we have become a global nation of an advanced civilization. That means when the world, you see it through like a snapshot photo, yeah, there's different nations, you know, everything's the same as before. But when you look at it in a dynamic vision, it's as if it's like an update that never stops updating is the only victory of the individual. The individual's urge for continuity. Henry David Thoreau says, if you would convince a man that he does wrong, do right. But do not care to convince him. Men will believe what they see. Let them see. Yeah. Galileo had a quote where he's like, you cannot teach anyone anything. You cannot teach a man anything. You can make him realize it from within himself. Because that's really where the knowing that you remember, that it's like the strength of the journey of your eyes comes from actually living in walking the unknown, continuing the unknown walk. That's like the fastest way to karmic cleansing, you know? Dare to see who you are beyond thought. That's really, you know, what's gonna usher us into the advanced era. Tony Blair says, the art of leadership is saying no, not yes. It is very easy to say yes. Norman Vincent Peale, part of the happiness of life consists not in fighting battles, but in avoiding them. A masterly retreat is in itself a victory. John F. Kennedy, leadership and learning are indispensable to one another. Beth Revis says power isn't control at all. Power is strength, and giving that strength to others. A leader isn't someone who forces others to make him stronger. A leader is someone willing to give his strength to others that may have the strength to stand on their own. Yeah, because honestly, it's like, think of the leader, all leadership being like, okay, I want to live in a better world, so you got to have better people. To have better people means that it's like there can't be the psychology of take before give. You know, if that changes, if that behavioral algorithm changes, I don't know. I feel like a species, 8 billion advanced mind brains can do so much better than what's happening now. Mike, there's no way I can pronounce this, but I shall try. Mike um, Kurzweski. Mike Kurzweski. Okay, Mike Kurzweski. Um, Zizuski. Oh, there we go. Krasuski. Oh my God, Krasuski. There we go. Mike Krasuski. I don't know, guys. Leadership is simple. Add value to people every day. Um, yeah. Donald J. Palmisano says the key to being a good leader is to focus on the mission and know how to implement a plan without getting lost in the swamp. Norman McSwain says leadership starts with respecting others and paying attention to the needs of those around you. Respecting those who you lead, may lead, follow, or just touch with your mind and eyes. You don't lead because you want to lead, you lead because they want to follow. Okay, Warren G. Bennett says the manager asks how and when, the leader asks what and why. Dr. James P. Bagion. Leadership is about identifying where you want to go, why it is important to go, and what's in it for others, both the positive and the negative. Leaders lead by example. Leadership is personal. It is working shoulder to shoulder. You must show you're willing to get your hands dirty. You must work at least as hard as those you wish to lead. They eat first. They eat first. They get sleeping quarters first. You will put yourself at risk, but both professionally and physically. Leadership is service before self. Wow. Well said. Because that leadership hasn't become collective. If we had a global system that was doing the work of the leader wouldn't need to even be there if the civilization was knew what to do. Governor Jindal. You must lead from the front, always. Speed is everything. There must be a sense of urgency. Listen to the locals. Keep the public informed on the details. They often know more than the Nobel Prize laureates. Ignore the politics. Focus on doing a good job. Donald H. McGannon says leadership is action, not position. Sharon Allen. A good leader is someone who sees beyond themselves and really thinks about how they can move their organization forward by helping others to fulfill their potential. Now guys, imagine any person, any group, any leader of an organization. If you don't have the word global in front of your organization, it's like tragedy. It's like, what are you doing? Like that means it's like either ideological institutions must renounce their Hunger Games, you know. That means either the you know, if we want the better, we can't act like the worst is already here, you know. Karl von Clausewitz. A swift and vigorous transition to attack, the flashing sword of vengeance, is the most brilliant point of the defensive. He's not wrong, but when he says it is the most brilliant point of the defensive, okay, yeah, as a defense, because you're allowed, because you're being hit first, then there's no holding back. So I guess it makes sense, because it's like the justification for that most brilliant point, the emotion, is that they hit first, really, I feel. But it's a great quote nonetheless. Insightful. Marilyn Hewson. Good leaders organize and align people around what the team needs to do. Great leaders motivate and inspire people with why they're doing it. That's purpose, and that's the key to achieving something truly transformational. Margaret Wheatley. Leadership is a series of behaviors rather than a role for heroes. Indra Nooyi. Leadership is hard to define, and good leadership even harder. But if you can get people to follow you to the ends of the earth, you're a great leader. Oh my God. I would say Lao Tzu had the ultimate quote on leadership, really, or what I said earlier. If the leader is still a leader, then the leader hasn't done its job. That means if the leader still needs to be around, that means the people haven't been led yet. The guru within is more important than the guru without. Sheryl Sandberg says, I want every little girl who's told she's bossy to be told she has leadership skills. Of course, the inspiration of the youth is the key to the future success, but I will tell you, we have to move beyond the details. It has to be just a level where it's just the idea of a human being. You know, you could be, for example, you know, you can look like a human being, but you can also not behave like a human being. So the human being has to be also an ideological of honored value. Do you know? That means to be a human being, you need to have honor, you know, for the design. If you don't have honor for the design in modalities and psychological pressures, the person just gives in. And let me tell you what happens. What happens in, I would say, failure even in the inner realms. Usually what happens is when a person loses, they come to a moment where their inner realms can't change the outer realms. Now, if they can't accept the moment, they keep on losing. Now, what happens? You get pushed down, you get to a point of failure where you can't go forward anymore, and you are left with the void. It's as if you have reached the bottom, so because you have hit the bottom, there is nowhere else left to go. That means you cannot lose anymore after you've lost, right? So there is that aftermath silence with no identity, yet just the unknown witness. And I will tell you, the greatest treasures of this world are behind our eyes, not in front of them. If we truly care to be universal beings, we have to, in the future, even consider that non-human phenomena. Like in my science fiction novel, I wrote that even like robots or androids are walking among us, aliens are walking. This is in the year 5025. Yeah. And of course, what I'm saying is a work of fiction, but everything is fiction until it becomes non-fiction. In a world where, imagine you were walking in the street and you saw like fellow human beings and you're like, hey, what's up? You know, and the other human beings were like, hey, what's up? You know, but then imagine as you walked, you suddenly heard a robot be like, hey, what's up? You know? And the person looks and sees an android, a robot, you know, humanoid, but it's a robot. And imagine the person's like, hey, what's up? You know, shakes hands with the robot, you know, then there's an alien. Also, the alien's there like, yo, what up? Do you know? And the person like shakes hands with the alien. Yo, man, long time no see. You know, where in the galaxy have you been? You know, that kind of talk. You know, and then imagine there's like a dolphin in a robotic suit, okay, in a water capsule, and even the dolphin's like, yo, what up? And you're like shaking hands with the robotic hand suit of the dolphin, you know. And that would be really, for me, a vision of an advanced civilization. A civilization that doesn't fear what happens, but learns from all the dimensions that enter the manifest realm. The species must breathe anew. That means really breathing is a force. Sometimes I feel that it is the case biologically. There is like you know, of course, the skeletal structure, you know, that's holding all of this, you know, the muscular, the muscles in some sense, and then there's the skin, the overlay, and the various systems at work, right? But sometimes I playfully imagine like inside my body is hollow, and imagine like, okay, imagine like different colors of light, you know, light clouds, not clouds of light, but I would say like smoke clouds of light. I shouldn't say smoke clouds, I should say like, it's just imagine like different colors of gases, right? And so the point I'm saying is like, I feel it's like all that I'm being is a point of attention. That is what knowing your being is. So I feel like there was a point at the beginning of this life, I started feeling, I was like, oh my God, I have a body and what should I do? Then it became like, what is this thing, even asking the question? The mystery surpassed any ideological system. So if we can get comfortable with our intelligence as space, then our view on what needs to happen in the materialistic changes. So whether we realize we're minds beyond the body, or whether in the future, let's say in a parallel universe, we become all robots and we're like, we are immortals technically at this point. We have no dying body. It's like, it's just one giant program. Rachel Sklar says, leadership is something that is learned. It can be learned and should be learned. Leadership is something you're always honing and learning and reflecting to see ways you could have been better at it. Anyone who thinks they're a natural leader is probably horrible to work with. Leadership is, I'm telling you, leadership is not a role. It's literally a response to a symptom. That means think of an efficient system needing no leader, but when the system becomes inefficient, then the backup system to the inefficiency, as a response to the inefficiency, is leadership. Leadership, there is no such thing as leader, but there's the leader's response. Right, so pretty much how attention is being piloted, and how attention is being piloted in groups, and how attention in 8 billion human beings on this planet is going to actually become the foundation, where it's as if just like we have to build the we have to design the blueprint and the map, the architecture of the building. We have to also at the same time, you know, in our inner realms, start envisioning like an invention, the more advanced moment, right? That means it's not about living as a good person and bad person anymore. It's like experience efficiency. This efficiency is not limited to self-knowing only, right? That means it's as if like the person who needs instructions is not ready to go on the battlefield. Really, to be honest. Because the person doesn't have to like, if you don't realize your own presence of attention and energy being instantaneously, like if the person doesn't realize that freedom means the free will can discriminate. So I would say there is no such thing as mental, well, of course, irrelevant to the brain's biological positioning, but when it comes to, I would say, what in modern culture is called mental illness, I would say it is just the absence of freedom in the inner realms. Because if you feel, it's pretty much two ways the mind can be. The mind either moves the world, or the mind is moved by the world. Now, I would say what in modern culture we're saying mental illness is due to the weak conditioning. Pretty much, here's the hilarious thing. The parents of this, in history so far, they did the right thing. Most parents, let's say majority of parents raising children on this planet throughout time, in the space-time continuum, they did the right thing of raising like good-natured human beings. But the hilarious thing is the world, it's as if we have, it's like, it's like the good boy is running into a bad world, okay? Then the good boy's like, well, I have all these good boy teachings, like, you know, but this world is like so much more intense, right? So that's the point where the person has to choose to move. True freedom is piloting and finding contentment with the known dimensions of your attention and the unknown. Those who find the unknown, you have heard my voice before I speak. Because that is the generator of known phenomena. Francis Hesselbein says, lead from the front, don't push from the rear. Lao Tzu, man of the hour. A leader is best when people barely know he exists. When his work is done, his aim fulfilled, they will say, we did it ourselves. I feel that's really what an advanced civilization is going to feel like. Just a very advanced, I would say free minds just logging in to serve the civilization through their manifest view. The big and the small were a myth. The world is multidimensionally unknown. And I would say now it is very clear to me. These talks of mine are just the calling for the next phase of explorers. That means there's no longer anything to follow. You're alive once, your DNA is unique. Nobody has the eyes, your eyes, so what are you going to do about that? It's like pretty much like they're like, you know, how do we inspire the planet? It's just like, tell them to look at their eyes, you know? When we care for sight, the future smiles. Benjamin Disraeli, I must follow the people. Am I not their leader? Okay. Arnold Glasso, I believe I read this. John D. Francais says, the 6 essential leadership attributes: set high standards, live your standards and mentor those who follow, create and share a vision, make the hard choices when necessary, be visible and out front, and instill hope in those who follow. I mean, think of it this way. Is an army of generals better, or one general and an army of soldiers? I will say the army of generals is so much better because the generals all know how to be a soldier. But the soldiers don't know how to be a general. That means a person can be living in this life feeling they're in complete control, then realize, wait a minute, what do I do with all this unknown? All this unknown space in the cosmos, you know? This scholar named Terence McKenna has this quote where he says, "Nobody knows enough to worry." I thought for a moment, oh my God, nobody knows enough to know. So we can't, that's why we can't worry. We can't even know what we're worrying about because it's so vast and unknown. Paul Johnson. Again and again. An enlightened and strong-willed individual has pushed against the prevailing trends and the prevailing wisdom to perform an act of courage that changed history. Theodore Roosevelt, the best executive is the one who has sense enough to pick good men to do what he wants done, and self-restraint to keep from meddling with them while they do it. Theodore Roosevelt says people ask the difference between a leader and a boss. The leader works in the open, the boss in covert. The leader leads and the boss drives. Pretty much like, think of Lord of the Rings 3, where the army of Rohan is fighting like that orcs army with like the messed up face. You know, like that, I don't even know how to define the orc. But they're fighting this orcs army, right? And so the orc was like the boss. You see, the boss is like, doesn't care for growth of the others, I would say, just cares for the outcome they get, right? But the leader has to care, because the leader's like, okay, all these people may have children in the future, right? All these people's children are going to go make decisions in the world. So pretty much think of it this way. Even you can have a selfish reason to help the world by being like, yo, my future grandkids are going to be in this world, you know? And it's like they're going to be around other people's future grandkids, you know? So it's like we gotta work now, you know? So there's enough geometry in this world to perceive anything as possible, but to actualize it in the outer realms has to come through a collective authorization, I would say. Nature's collective authorization. That means, imagine before there came an actual time where people threw their hats off and stopped wearing hats. Imagine there was a time in a, let's say, English culture where everybody had to wear hats. Like if you didn't wear a hat, you weren't a human being, you know? So imagine everybody had to wear a hat, right? And imagine the first person being like, I've had it. What is this on my head? You know? So the person gets the hat and throws the hat down. Then, now this is the issue. If the society is not ready for the change, the person's going to throw their hat down and people are going to be like, put your hat back. You know, pick up your hat. What are you doing? You know? But if the society's ready, if the society has actually noticed the weight on their head, they will unburden instantly. And that's advancement, you know? It's as if I remember recently I saw this show. A hobby of mine is to kind of find stories, really, to just see what stories have simulated on this earth. That means stories for me, life is literally being set as a story. So it's the most important thing to study, how a story happens. And it surpasses just the hero's journey. I saw this Japanese show, comic book based show, called The Promised Neverland. In it, it was like a very simple show. I'm not going to give anything away, because if I give a single thing away, the whole show's allure goes away. But I'll say it this way, that there's a character in this show that conflict comes to him, and even he gets punched in the face, but his intelligence is functioning at another level of calm, you know? And it's as if that was for me the most, I would say, beautiful archetype. The intelligent calmness, you know? That means if the intelligence can't do it calmly, it hasn't understood it well to even be able to endure it in a complex way. Mao Zedong says, take the ideas of the masses and concentrate them, then go to the masses, persevere in the ideas and carry them through so as to form correct ideas of leadership. Such is the basic method of leadership. Okay. Jean Chrétien, leadership means making people feel good. Yeah, but not in a burning house. Like, you got to put the flames of the house down, you know, then have people smile inside, you know. Joe Miller says, connect before you collaborate. But I'll say something about that previous quote, guys. Emotion is very important as well. Emotional stability over also intellectual precision. Joe Miller says, connect before you collaborate, listen before you lead, partner before you persuade. Monica L. Wolford says, leadership includes being able to confidently convey your message and the ability to confidently convey who you are. Yeah, it just, leadership means we build a civilization so advanced, everybody is a leader in whatever they choose to advance. Like, this world is big enough for there to be endless leaders in endless dimensions. If it's all in the outer realms, there's going to be Hunger Games, you know? What the outer realms need is we have to redesign the inner kingdom of our species, the psychological positioning on the chessboard of nature's laws, you know? So guys, I'm gonna end the talk here. Actually, I'm gonna say one last thing. Then I'm gonna come to the chat section, and my attention is gonna fly there. In the subtitle, I've written "Finding the Mirror Within." The mirror within is who you are being, or how the moment is being before you are anything. It's just efficiency. That there is no, if we choose to see life through only a moral lens, the future, it's going to be heroic sacrifice for no reason. But if we see it as just there's a better design hiding in the moment, and it's the first person to see it has the responsibility to share it. Right now, the world doesn't need meditators. The world needs advanced communicators. And advanced communicators are meditators who have noticed their inseparability with nature. So right now, as I'm speaking to you, I'm like an individual phenomenology, but I'm also simultaneously the world happening, you know? So I can say I am speaking to you, but on some level, an elemental creature on another side of the planet is just making mouth noises that you can comprehend. So I'm saying the inseparability of the individual and collective means that true collective living means that their individualism is not the obsession. That means the tree has its roots in a soil we can't see, right? And so it's as if the soil, the soul is rooted in a soil which we can't see. So we're saying the soul is invisible, but it's just that we can't dig beyond the soil of the sensory perception. And not that we can't, it's just we haven't tried, you know? So find the mirror within and you will free the world from yourself. And then you will see a free world from yourself. So my attention is going to the chat section. Welcome everyone. Consider this Q&A and think of anybody can throw any question at me, any kind of question. So there is freedom after all in speech. So Raziel says, an old woman gave me a cake when she saw me meditating and stretching after a few hours. It was actually the first time I did all that in public. The manager asks, oh no, so that's what I wrote. So Raziel says, so many people are dying here in Mexico. I think yoga can help them, so I've decided to do it in public. But the truth is, I'm self-taught, and maybe I don't know if I'm doing it right. Here's the thing. I'll tell you my experience. In 2014, when I gave these talks, I was like a militant mystic. And what I mean by that is I would just go and sit in like this. I was studying mechanical engineering in UK for some time, and I would go and sit in a what do you call it, in the campus of the university, Birmingham City University. They had this campus and just this grass field, right? And I remember I would go at a grass field where everybody had to kind of cross paths when they would go to the school, right? So what happened is I would sit there I would sit there and just close my eyes, and I would just trust the moment, right? And I would just sit there for an hour, and it was just, for me, I'm like, I was just in my mind, I'm just sitting here, you know. That was my whole view on meditation at that point, right? But I was like, while I was sitting there, you can kind of feel like people's voice, you can feel people noticing, right? So after a point, I was like, okay, what kind of memory am I creating for these people? And I realized, in a world where everybody is like moving at a speed and with distrust, I had stopped my speed and just sat there, you know? And of course, after a point, it got cold and I got up, but 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 I'm telling you, there's no point. The truth, if there is truth, it doesn't need preaching, you know. It's just that if there is inefficiency, we are trying to counter it alchemically to make it efficient. So I did that, but that's not really what brings change, I feel. I feel that, I mean, you can do that at the same time, like, your days are just gonna go by sitting. It's like a lifetime of mastering sitting down. But I'll say the best thing is to live with eyes that are freer. That means in your inner realms, be free. Be a free being. Literally just feel as if every human being, there's this saying, they say everyone has a battle, is fighting a battle you can't see. So that means literally it's normal. Suffering is like the regular, the usual, right? So if everybody is suffering, that technically means they have to counter their suffering ideologically through some life force from within them, right? So that countering means everybody is kind of caught in a story. And because there's suffering, that means there's no freedom. How can there be suffering and freedom simultaneously? Right? Either suffering has to be meaningless and freedom is in the moment, or their freedom has to be meaningless and there's suffering in the moment. Right? So if a person lives in a moment where they are not suffering, you're just, even if you're a human being who, you're like, Mr. Within, I don't know what to do, what do I do? I'll be like, okay, observe neutrally. Just be space. Be space until your attention feels it requires to evoke in the outer realms. That means this is the thing, that we are locally embodied and non-locally field-like. That means you can actually feel the mind. Sometimes when I give these talks, that in the images I build up to in my inner realms, I get an emotion from them. You know, I've had moments where I've given talks and I've been talking about something pleasant, but there's been just tears in my eyes. Just no emotion, nothing, none of the sinuses, the fluid in the sinuses of the person not changing, you know. Just the sort of to be at peace before the infinite game of peaceness. I would say right now communication needs to be advanced, and self-inquiry is the way. I would just say any group of people who get together and just wonder about what existence is, that's like, what's more exciting than that? You know, it's like the inner realms. You learn from multiple lifetimes, you know. Anyways, guys, I'll be in the Discord group server. Thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful.